When it comes to climate policy, these global rankings are a huge deal. They tell us who's really leading the charge and who might be falling behind. And that's why we need to talk about the latest Climate Change Performance Index, because one of the world's biggest players just took a major tumble.
And here it is, the big headline. India, a country that was, steadily climbing the ladder on climate action, just suddenly dropped 13 spots, landing at 23rd. This really caught a lot of people by surprise, and it makes you ask, right? What on earth happened?
So to really get why this is such a big story, we got to understand the scale of this drop. I mean, this isn't just a small shuffle. It's a really significant change.
13. Just let that number sink in for a second. For one of the world's biggest emitters to fall 13 places in just 1 year, that's not just a slip, that's a huge deal. It really points to a big change in how its performance is being seen.
And this really puts it into perspective. See, India wasn't just, doing okay. It was consistently in the top 10. It was often held up as a leader among developing nations. So to go from that elite group all the way down to 23rd, yeah, that's a pretty dramatic shift.
Okay, so this begs a pretty basic question. We're throwing around this term, CCPI, and talking about this big drop. But what is the Climate Change Performance Index, really? Like, what's it measuring? And who's even running this thing?
So, simply put, the CCPI is this independent monitoring tool. Probably the easiest way to think about it is like an annual report card for countries on how they're doing with climate change. And its whole goal is to make things more transparent and, put a little healthy pressure on governments to step up their game.
And the reason the CCPI is so credible is because of its sheer scale. It's not just one group, it's a team effort between some really respected environmental organizations. And they've been at this since 2005. But here's the kicker. It looks at the countries that are responsible for over 90% of global greenhouse gas emissions. So when they say something, yeah, it carries a lot of weight.
Okay, so if it's a report card, how exactly do they calculate the grade? What are the different subjects they're looking at? Let's pop the hood and see how the scoring actually works.
All right, the whole score is broken down into 4 main categories. You've got renewable energy, energy use, and climate policy, and each of those makes up 20% of the total score. But the real heavyweight here, the one that matters most, is greenhouse gas emissions. That one accounts for a massive 40%. So what does that tell you? It means how well a country is actually cutting its emissions has the single biggest impact on where it lands in the rankings.
Okay, so now that we know how the scoring works, let's circle back and look at India's report card.
This timeline really tells a story, doesn't it? I mean, just look at that steady climb. From 31st back in 2014, pushing into the top 15, and then wow, breaking into the top 10 by 2019. It held that strong 8th place spot for 2 years straight, and then boom, this sudden sharp drop to 23rd.
So of course, the big question is, what's going on here? Is it all bad news? Well, when you dig into the data, it's actually a lot more complicated than that. It's really a mixed picture, some real progress, but also some pretty serious warning signs.
So on one hand, there are areas where India is doing exceptionally well. The amount of renewable energy in the mix, that's been growing steadily. And get this is a huge milestone. More than half of the country's total installed power capacity is now from non-fossil fuel sources. That is a massive achievement, no question about it.
So since it's such a mixed bag, how do we put this drop into perspective? To really get the full story, we kind of have to zoom out and look at the global leaderboard. How does that 23rd spot really stack up against everyone else?
And right away, the most interesting thing here is what's not here. Take a look at the top of the list. First, second, and third place. They're empty. Yep, that's right. The CCPI intentionally leaves those spots blank. Why? Because their analysis shows that no country on Earth is doing enough to get us on track to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius.
This quote from the report really says it all. It's just a sobering reminder that, while we're busy comparing countries, the real race is against the clock. It's against climate change itself. And in that race, it seems like the whole world is falling behind.
Okay, for one more bit of context, let's put India's ranking next to another major G20 economy. So while India fell to 23rd, the United States, well, it's way down at 65th. So that comparison really helps frame things, right? It's definitely a setback for India, but it's still way ahead of a lot of other big emitters.
So here's the bottom line. Even with this big drop, India is still considered one of the higher performers within the G20, the group of the world's biggest economies.
It's just a complicated story. It's a mix of maybe losing some momentum in some key areas while still being a leader in others.
And all this leaves us with a really big question. With this incredible success story in non-fossil fuel power, over 50%, what's it going to take for India to get back into that top spot? What's the key to reclaiming its position as a top-tier climate performer? That's the challenge ahead.